Good evening, afternoon, night, morning, whenever you find a way to watch or listen to this podcast. It's me, Omar, back with another Installations podcast, back with a familiar face, friend that I love to have on this podcast, Bobby of the TNT College Football Podcast. And he's rocking the UConn hat. So just like last time, we're going to talk about UConn football with Bobby. Before we start, Bobby, how's everything going?
Good, Omar. How are you?
I'm good. Blessed and highly favored. So I
Yes.
mean, I'm just excited to talk about college football, even though the season just ended.
It's always a weird time because you're sad that the season ended, but then now it's almost like there's no end with the transfer portal and everything going. I mean, it seems like it never ends anymore, but now we got to wait till August for games. It's kind of sad.
Yeah, it is sad. I mean, and like I always love the All-Star games too. It's like one of my favorite times of year
Yeah.
as I'm rocking my Hula Bowl hat. Like my favorite times of year because me is just like a college football historian. How much these games meant, to onlookers across the country, seeing like all these players come, like even back in the days when not many games were televised, seeing all these players like come together and play on TV all in one place. Or if you're a fan going to these games, seeing these players play in your backyard, whether it was like in San Francisco for the East West Shrine game, just seeing them play. So a lot of the luster of All-Star games is worn off, but not for people like me. Still love seeing these games. No matter what. So that is also, I guess, sort of a consolation now the season's over, and of course schedules releasing at least on the FCS level because they tend to release their schedules closer, I guess, like not too far out in advance. So plenty of excitement still. I mean, especially too if you're in the Borderlands too, as a Conference USA released their schedule. So there's a few weeknight games that very excited to go to. Like the I think it's the 100th meeting of the Battle of I-10. New Mexico State and UTEP will be on a Wednesday night national television. So how great that is for that rivalry. But yeah, plenty of excitement. Bittersweet though, as Bobby mentioned. So which is why we're just digging into like off-season topics. So last time we were on the podcast, Bobby, we tried to project UConn's bowl destination, and I thought we had a lock on our hands, but I mean, turns out we were wrong, as I think the least expected team out of all the bowl pool to play in the Quick Lane Bowl ended up playing the Quick Lane Bowl in New
Right.
Mexico State. And UConn ended up in Myrtle Beach. So, what are your thoughts since we're talking about UConn going like UConn's bowl destinations? What are your thoughts on the bowl destination? Could it have been a better destination and just anything else?
Well, I know UConn fans loved the destination. I mean, who doesn't want to go to the beach? But I, I know a lot of the people that I'm close with that were able to go to the game. Just they loved it. They said it was a great opportunity for one, but they were treated really well. And I think too, a lot of UConn people from Connecticut in the Northeast, they will travel to Myrtle Beach for vacations rather frequently. So I think it's kind of a place that maybe some of the fans were used to. So I think that was good. I mean, of course, a lot of the fans wanted to go to Boca Raton or some of those trendy, warm, really warm places. But I was excited about of course, any bowl, we're excited to be there. But it was funny because when you became bowl eligible, I said, we're going to the Myrtle Beach Bowl. And I was going to speak existence. Or I thought about it, I'm like, okay, Quick Lane Bowl might have might have fit better. And that's what we talked about. And like you said, they picked New Mexico State, which was a little interesting to say the least. But props to them for winning, though. That was fantastic.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean the trophy's coming back to Las Cruces, so next weekend I'm gonna make the 1 hour drive up to Las Cruces, take my picture with the Quick Lane Bowl trophy. So
That's awesome.
while I can. So I couldn't make the game, but at least I'll make it for the picture with the trophy. But yeah, I think that's a good point too. Just talking about vacationers in the Northeast going to Myrtle Beach. I mean, you mentioned the weather being warm, and it looks the weather looked good on TV. Like last
Mm.
year's game, made the 2.5 hour drive from where I was stationed in Georgia to Myrtle Beach, or actually it was 3.5 hours, and I was kind of struggling by the second half when the sun went down. I was struggling in just a hoodie with the temperatures. So might have been warm then, but wasn't warm last year. So I mean that's good to hear. I mean I guess, um, but yeah, like in terms of I guess it's good. I guess that UConn got it in with the ESPN bowls, which is I think that's all it came down to. What surprised me the most is like New Mexico State had an in with the ESPN bowls, which is why like didn't think they'd go to the Quick Lane Bowl, which is why UConn fit there. So whatever that holds for future bowl appearances, I don't know if there's some sort of backroom deal with ESPN and UConn, but this certainly bodes well that an ESPN owned bowl was willing to take a flyer on UConn.
I'll speak to the tie-in aspect. I've heard AD Dave Benedict say that there is a tie-in in the works. Of course, nobody knows what it is. That has not been released, and nobody knows about that. But that there's at least something going on. It very well could be the scenario we're going to be talking about in this episode. I have no idea, but yeah, there's. But I've been told that there's something in the works at least.
Wow, that's exciting to hear. And like I've been wondering too if there would be something that works because something I've thought about with conference year alignment, the biggest domino to have fallen is BYU, I think, in terms of at
Mhm.
least for a school like UConn, because BYU had, I think this year, excuse me, yeah, so this year, so even number or odd number of years, 2021, 2023, and 2025 they had a contract with the Independence Bowl. So that's an easy, plug and play there. And I think at this point, with the type of tie-ins that the Independence Bowl has, like, it makes sense for them to, I wouldn't say settle for UConn because I don't think UConn fans think Shreveport is a match made in heaven for them as a bowl destination. I don't think locals in Shreveport think that, but it's something that's very workable. So,
Mhm.
um, not insulting either party by the way, but just kind of saying like ideally in terms of geography and everything, put into perspective. But that's amazing to hear there's a bowl that there's a bowl tie in the works. So I guess that's a smooth lead into our topic of discussion today. We're discussing a couple weeks ago the Cincinnati Chili Bowl announced they're going to conduct a feasibility study for a bowl game to be hosted at that city's MLS field, TQL Stadium, to be hosted or for a bowl game to be televised on the CW. And it's very unique because Cincinnati, you don't think as a great winter destination for snowbirds, but with any bowl, you need tie-ins. So that's where UConn comes into play here, an independent without a bowl tie-in, just hoping for an at-large spot to come, or a year where there's not enough bowl-eligible teams and bowls have to choose UConn. So, Bobby, what are your initial thoughts on UConn being in the Cincinnati Chili Bowl if this were to come into fruition?
I think any tie-in is huge. I don't care where it is. I think like you said. I mean, you have to hope that not enough teams become eligible in the scenario that we have now. So it's so important to get that tie-in, and I think Cincinnati would be fantastic because I think it's within driving distance of Connecticut. I mean, I don't know the exact uh, metrics on that, but it's a drivable distance. Me personally, living in Illinois, I would love it. It's not terribly far for me, selfishly, but I think, like I said, any scenario is good for UConn with a tie-in. And UConn has a bit of a history playing in Cincinnati, so there's been some battles in Cincinnati, Louisville, in that area. So I mean, it's it would be good. I think it would be a good opportunity potentially to open up some potential recruiting uh, inroads in the state of Ohio. I mean, I know the UConn coaching staff is top notch, and I know they're doing their best across the country getting the guys. And we all know Ohio is a very talent rich state, especially in the Midwest. Probably the best in the Midwest. So I think it'd be fantastic. I mean, then you get to go to Cincinnati and have chili dogs. I mean, who doesn't want that?
I definitely agree on the chili dogs part. It's interesting you bring up the history of UConn in Cincinnati. Of course, me growing up watching UConn be in the Big East with Cincinnati and watching that carry on to the American until UConn opted for independence. That kind of brings me to ask about opponent wise. Like, what were your thoughts? What were your thoughts on the American being an opponent, having UConn play some of those old conference rivals? Maybe not so much rivals, but kind of stir up that bad blood because I know there's a lot of bad blood about UConn leaving the conference and you, of course, being a basketball coach,
Mhm.
disrespecting the basketball pedigree of the American on the way out. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on that whole dynamic if that were to be?
It's definitely going to be interesting. That's for sure. I, I'll speak on the fact of my UConn fandom and connections really have only started it within the past couple of years while they've been an independent. I mean, of course, I know the history and everything, but and I know there's a lot of fans that might be a little. They're not going to be upset, but I think it's going to bring up some memories possibly. But I think anytime you have an opportunity to play a good team, especially the American has good teams, we know that, and anytime you have the opportunity to play somebody like that, it's going to be great. I mean, they play USF this year in Connecticut, so there's definitely history between those two. But I think the other thing that we could see if it's a AAC partnership is with all the new teams in the American, it could be somebody completely different too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we forget just like the huge turnaround, like the amount of teams they're
Mhm.
absorbing, I think 6 teams from Conference USA. So it's gonna be a totally different makeup than, of course, the makeup that UConn was used to with the three schools, Cincinnati, Houston, and UCF leaving the next year. So that's a great point that it could be a different makeup, and the bad blood maybe won't be there, for sure. But I guess like going to a more realistic opponent, of course, this game Cincinnati, it's in MAC country. You have the I think four MAC schools. Yeah, the four schools in the MAC. Yeah, I think it's four in the MAC, and of course you have Miami of Ohio in that Southern Ohio region. What would you think about UConn being tied into this bowl with a MAC opponent?
I think it'd be great. That's something that me and my co-host that I do a weekly UConn football show. We've talked a lot about UConn and the MAC, just because right now, especially the level of competition in the MAC and the way UConn's been most recently, it fits the competition level. Granted, UConn is, of course, trying to exceed that, and they will in the near future. But I think it's something that would really do well. I mean, UConn played Ball State this year in Muncie. I was at that game. It was a good football game, and Ball State played a heck of a game. And Carson Steele was a monster, but that's why he's at UCLA now. But but I, I think I think it'd be really good. I think the MAC needs more bowl tie-ins too, personally, because the MAC is good. I know it takes a lot of crap uh, from the national media, and I live in MAC country. I live in Illinois, and so I only live like hour and a half, 2 hours from Northern Illinois, and just what that program's done over the years is amazing. And I know so many other teams in the MAC can say that too. And I think if you're able to play an upper echelon team in the MAC, uh, it'd be a really good test.
Yeah, I would agree for that. On to the point, I guess, with UConn and the MAC matching up well. Are you surprised that UConn isn't playing the MAC as much in their independent schedules? I mean, I can just speak on just this year and 2021, where only I mean Ball State's the only opponent they've played from the MAC. Where like Army in their years when they returned, excuse me, when they returned from Conference USA to Independence, they played a MAC team every single year from 2005 to 2018, and then of course played Ball State last year in 2021. And it was just huge for the building that schedule. Those games were always kind of I always thought those games were cool, honestly, especially in 2018 when Army won its first Lambert Trophy in nearly 60 years, and just like seeing them clip down like three bowl eligible MAC teams, including a Buffalo team that won 10 games and blew out Rutgers. They also beat a decent Eastern Michigan team by multiple scores. A decent team that almost beat Georgia Southern and Camellia Bowl that year. So I just think about the regional interest of those rivalries, while we're like UConn isn't in, they're not in MAC country, they're not in the Midwest, but they're close enough where it's like interesting, it's a manageable drive, and they match up well to those schools. So I guess what were your thoughts on just like UConn's kind of infrequencies in playing the MAC?
I agree with you. I mean, I think it'd be great. I've always wondered why they don't play Buffalo more. Just I mean that of course Buffalo is the most eastern team in the max. I mean, and it's not far from Connecticut, so it would make perfect sense. I mean, I know they played in a bowl game, but other than that, there isn't much of a history. And again, selfishly, I'd love to see them play more MAC teams because then they'd be closer for me. But at the same time, I think it's the matchup perspective, like we've talked about, especially recently. It would just be a lot better. I know AD Dave Benedict strives for UConn to have a Power Five type schedule and strives to have UConn play as many P5s as possible. And he's done an amazing job with that. And I know he tries to get as many of the Northeast P5 teams to play as possible. And this year he did an amazing job getting Syracuse, Boston College, just those matchups are huge for Northeast football, as you know. And I, but I agree. I mean, getting some games against the upper echelon teams in the MAC and then beating them, like you said in Army's case, can really propel you into a really good season.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I mean, especially when you beat the teams that are like in the upper level of the conference, when you beat the teams that participate in the MAC championship game, like those are just great non-conference wins for, as an independent, it's always kind of hard. If you don't get those Power Five wins, it's like what wins do you hang your hat on? And like that's not to say that Power Five wins are the only wins that matter, but it's like
Mm-hmm.
when you beat teams that are regionally close to you and have solid seasons, it just means, so much more for independence. While like I think like speaking I guess in UConn's case, the win against I gotta ask like the win against Fresno State was great, but I guess how was your feeling? Like did it feel different that it was a California team and not like a nearby team?
That game was monumental just because it helped us get over the hump and helped us mentally so much. But I mean, I do agree. Being a team from California, it probably doesn't mean as much as say beating um, you name it from the ACC, like one of the smaller teams in the ACC, or even like obviously UConn plays UMass every year, but obviously our win against Boston College that means so much for so many reasons, the rivalry itself, and then just staking a claim in the Northeast. But I mean, I totally get what you're saying there, and there is definitely something to that. I mean, you want to beat the teams that are more of a rival to you, but geographically, it just means more too.
Yeah, I would agree, and that's what came to my mind, which I mean I forgot to mention when I asked, but like the Boston College game, of course, like Boston College 3-9, but just that whole regional aspect, UConn's first win against BC, despite being conference mates for a couple years in the Big East, and everything else, and then meeting a couple times after being conference mates. So, I do agree, even though the Fresno State win was huge. Just moving on, I guess, to more opponents. Like, this one's kind of outside the box, but of course, like with the new bowl needing new tie-ins and everything, this kind of ties into the WAC A Sun. This ambitious plan to move all these teams up to FBS all at once. I guess what would your thoughts be? I don't think it's likely that this conference would be one of the bowl tie-ins and not the MAC. That we would have a UConn versus WAC A Sun matchup. But what would your thoughts be on that? Potentially playing, I guess, the champion of the WAC A Sun, which I do believe that the Cincinnati Chili Bowl would probably be their only bowl tie-in. Just with the tenuous climate with bowls. So what would your thoughts be on UConn playing the WAC A Sun champion?
It'd be interesting, that's for sure. I mean, props to those teams for those institutions, I should say, for having the ambition to do this, um, especially in this climate. I mean, it's rough out here for a lot of these smaller schools. I mean, so for them to have uh, the I guess the sense and the wherewithal to do something like that, I give them all the credit in the world for it. I it, again, it might be a little weird to play a team from the West Coast or a team from Texas in a bowl game like that. But if it's the conference champion, you're playing an upper echelon team, a better team. So I think anytime you can beat somebody who's a good quality opponent, it's huge, especially for UConn moving forward as we're trying to establish ourselves and build the and create a better image of the program. I think this year they did just an unbelievable job of doing that. I think it's completely changed the national media's perspective of them, but there's still work to be done. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And it would be interesting to meet a lot of these schools because, of course, like the WAC Sun kind of it spans from Eastern Kentucky to all the way to Utah with Southern Utah and
Mhm.
Utah Tech. I always keep wanting to call Utah Tech Dixie State still, but I keep
Yeah,
forgetting that
yeah,
like yeah, I keep forgetting. But yeah, like even then, like you mentioned, like the schools being distant, like it would be weird having like the Texas schools, like the Utah schools playing as a conference champion that game. But I mean. Austin P and Eastern Kentucky are nearby. I think within 2 hours away of Cincinnati and would probably sell well, So it could feel like, going into someone's backyard and beating them if UConn were to play either of those schools. If that were in the I want to say slim chance of that happening, but you honestly never know with the way
right.
things are these days.
Yeah, you never know. You never know what's going to happen now. I mean, I agree with you. I think the MAC, I think they'd be really missing out if they didn't get a MAC team in there. But crazier things have happened as we've seen.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, I think this wraps up our conversation with UConn and everything that's involving the Cincinnati Chili Bowl, the possibility of that. I guess with All-Star season coming up, are there any UConn guys that you're looking out for, Bobby? I think it's either one or two defensive backs from UConn playing in the Hula Bowl. I know there's already one, but I don't know if they added another one. But I mean, other than the Hula Bowl participants for UConn, like, is there anyone else in All-Star game season to watch out for Husky Nation?
There's two guys in the Hula Bowl. Trey Wortham is the corner, and then linebacker Brandon Boyer Randall is in there. Um, hopefully, hopefully, as things continue, as the program continues to build, we'll get more and more guys in there. UConn was very underclassmen heavy this year, so there wasn't a ton of seniors. But for Trey Wortham was one of the top guys in the country in interceptions. He had a fantastic season. And then Brandon Boyer Randall came to UConn after playing at Michigan State and Texas Tech. So he when he's playing, he is a fantastic linebacker. So I mean, these are two guys that are going to have a shot. Um, I don't obviously I you have no idea if they're going to get drafted, but with the options of the XFL, USFL, and the CFL, I mean, there's opportunities for guys to play still.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. And I mean, you look at like the Hula Bowl, one of my favorites too is like my podcast with Jackson, our preview. I always talk about how the Hula Bowl is more of a celebration of college football compared to the Senior Bowl, where it's like, it's got that pro radar.
Yeah.
Last year, when I went to the Hula Bowl last year from from Georgia, got a cheap flight from Georgia to Orlando. And then saw Mackenzie Milton, play like, one last game of the bounce house. So it was definitely a celebration, celebratory atmosphere that game. But even then, I mean, just you looking at the quarterback picture in the NFL in week 18 and even in the playoffs, you look at Anthony Brown, a guy who played in the Hula Bowl last year. That no one really batted an eye towards during All-Star game season, and Skylar Thompson, a guy who played in the East West Shrine game, which hadn't had a third rounder, or they hadn't had a second rounder, I think, in like almost 20 years before I think Taekwon Thompson was drafted last year. So these All-Star games do matter. You saw it in the Week 18 playoff picture. Like these games do matter. So it's great that these UConn guys are playing in it, and I just hope I gotta check to see which Army guys are playing because last year I was so stoked to see that Zach Harding, our punter, got a spot in the NFLPA Collegiate Bowl because that's just like a spotlight. That's like a spotlight position. Like, there's no rush. You can just, see the punters just unleash rockets.
Yep.
all day. So, hopefully I got to see Army's all-star picks, but I'm sure there's one or two. But oh yeah, if not Andre Carter, I know that's the obvious one. Hopefully you got a
Yeah,
Senior Bowl invite.
yeah.
That's definitely the obvious one there. But yeah, I think that's all I have to talk about. Bobby, do you have anything else to add?
No, I mean, I'm just thankful that you had me on the show again, Omar. Always appreciate coming on here. I love talking with you, and hopefully the listeners, as I do, learn to appreciate the Huskies, and hopefully they continue to put a good product on the field. I know they will. Coach Moore is doing a heck of a job.
Yeah, absolutely. And I gotta agree the same, as an Army fan, it's hard for me to give up that pedestal of being like the preeminent Northeastern independent, or like not give it up. I'd say like have competition, but it's welcome competition. It's good for Northeast college football for both
Yes.
Army and UConn to be doing good. So yeah, no, I mean look out for Bobby's content, not just UConn, but everything else. TNT College Football Podcast on Twitter and on Spotify. Links will be in the description and everything. And thanks for tuning in, everyone. Until next time, peace, love, and soul.